Call the meeting to order. Let's start with the declaration of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have conflict of interest?
No?
No? Okay, then approval of the minutes. Do we have approval for the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting as presented.
Okay, okay. And approval of the agenda.
Excuse me, Ryan, we need a seconder for the minutes, please.
Oh yeah, seconder of the minutes. I can't do it.
I can do that. Harry.
Thanks.
Okay. And that's approval of the agenda. I
I
don't
just have
have
a
anything to
question
add
before we approve the agenda. I have one question. Should we have a category business arising from the minutes? Or do the members prefer to deal with the things under reports? Like there were a couple of motions in the minutes that were going to be dealt with in the past month. Ramona, you could answer that. So should those be updated under the reports or should they come from a category of business arising?
Typically, we would have a business arising from the minutes as a standing item on the agenda.
Okay, so we would put that in under number 5, maybe. So can we change the agenda? Yeah, to be business arising. Is
Okay.
everybody okay with that?
So why wouldn't it just be under new business? Because that's kind of or old business, maybe.
Ramona, would you like those? There's at least 2 motions being dealt with. So should they come under business arising or should they come under new business?
I'm not an expert in Robert's Rules of Order, but for our committee meetings, we would always have a category business arising from the minutes so that we can clarify any old items before moving on to new business.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll make that. But sorry to interrupt. So with that, can we have the approval of the agenda then? I need a mover and a seconder.
I think Joanne also wanting I had located from before. Sure. Accounted
Okay.
for in the agenda.
So we're approved.
Sorry, Carrie, I couldn't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you moving the approval of the agenda?
I was actually just wanted to make sure you had mentioned wanting to discuss the brainstorm ideas that and is that accounted for already on the agenda? I know it's there's an item for looking at the terms of reference, but it's not the same thing.
Maybe under new business. What do you think?
Okay. And then, so I think the I think the agenda has been approved then. Let's move to update on the terms of reference.
Okay, just a second. I'm going to interrupt again. Sorry to be such a approval of agenda. Do I need a mover and a seconder?
I think.
Okay, Margaret's going to move it, and who
I
can
will
second
second.
it?
I will second.
Thank you. Okay, and so with that, Ryan, what we did was we put business arising in between there is number 5. The terms of reference, we're going to put that as number 6.
Okay.
So business
So next-
arising,
okay. So next, business arising then.
thank you.
What are the two motions you'd like to discuss?
All righty. Well, the first one was under, Peter moved under Public Works. New construction projects should include active transportation as a consideration in their plans. And it was seconded by Jason and it carried. And then Heather was going to work on the form and submit it to Ramona. So Ramona, where did it go with that?
Well, I can tell you that I provided the form. Now I just had some technical issues, so I had to log out of my computer. And Ramona, are you able to bring the form up that I sent you? I don't know if I can. Let me just see if I can. I'm on my iPad now, but I'll see. Let me just check. Oops. Okay. I had it ready to go on my laptop, but then I don't know. I was having issues, so I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll see if we can see this thing now. Share. Ugh. Files? No. That's not going to work. Do you have it, Ramona?
I do.
Okay. I printed off a copy so I can speak to it. I just can't seem to share it on my iPad at present.
Can you see it there now?
I
Yes.
can, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
so what I did, I came up with a draft based on what we had discussed back when we discussed it some ages ago, and we were live in person in City Hall. Directed to Mitchell Tweel and members of the ENS Committee, Environmental and Sustainability Committee, prepared by us, the Mayor's Active Transportation Task Force. The parts that are highlighted in yellow are just the parts that need to be changed. There may be other things that need to be changed, but they were the ones that I knew for sure. Okay, subject, considerations for the development of a multi-use policy that would should be set standards for active transportation infrastructure. That's what I called it. We can discuss that. Recommendation that the Environment and Sustainability Committee forward a request from the Mayor's Active Transportation Task Force to the, and I'm not sure what committee or where it gets forwarded to, that a multi-use policy be developed that would ensure active transportation lanes be considered when planning new streets and when upgrading existing sidewalk infrastructure. And then I made, I put the following details. This was from what we had discussed that day that then didn't really go very far. The task force has identified the following be considered as part of the development of this policy. Consider implementing multi-use infrastructure when repairing existing sidewalks. Review the option to create new multi-use pathways where none currently exist. Ensure multi-use infrastructure is constructed and maintained to ensure safe use, including but not limited to surface and signage. And in areas that have sidewalk on either side of the street, that when one is in need of replacement, one side is replaced with a multi-use path.
That says with a must-use path. Should that be multi?
Oh, I think it should be multi, yes.
Okay.
The only thing I would suggest other than that is that in the recommendation section, instead of active transportation lanes, we say active transportation pathways to be consistent with what we say
Okay.
elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
The
Anyone
more I
else
see-
have? Oh,
No, I was gonna say, the more I see active transportation pathways coming up and being put in, I get really excited about it. Like it's, I think it's awesome. And to see something like this, you know, for new construction and replacement of sidewalks, I think this could just be so awesome for everybody.
now, Ramona, I know you mentioned something about looking at bylaws. I do apologize, I didn't have a chance to do that. I don't know if there are any bylaws around that, or if this is meant to inform new ones, or,
I think I think the development of the policy, like the work that would go into that, would note any of those gaps. Heather, I don't
Okay.
know if you need to say it explicitly in there.
okay, very good.
I think this is wonderful. Under the subject, we're missing a word, considerations for the development of a multi-use policy that would blank.
Set standards.
Set
Yeah,
standards.
set standards. I identified another word was needed there, so it'll be set standards.
Looking good.
So we okay with that, or?
I think it's fantastic.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Ramona, did you make those changes, or do you want me to, Ramona, and resend? Oh, you, thank you.
Yeah, no
That's
worries.
kind of Okay,
I'll just do that one.
super. Thanks a lot.
That's excellent, Heather. Thanks for your work on that. And Ramona, where does it go? What committee will it go to?
It'll go to Public Works. If it's approved at the ENS committee, it'll go to Public Works.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Margaret, did you want to go through yours? I know you sent me some things also.
I think you're muted, Margaret. There you go.
Hello. Do you want to bring it up, Ramona? I'm trying to even remember what I saved it under. I think it was regarding just asking for some signage around the about leashed and unleashed at Queen Elizabeth Park. And mine probably needs some recommendation and movement and changes to it too. So yeah, that's basically, I just kind of took it out of the minutes. And Ramona, it is the correct department, right?
Yeah, so through our terms of references, it's written right now, they all have to go through ENS before they go to another committee.
Okay. And then yeah, so basically that's what I put in. And if there is kind of some more wording that we need in here, I also can do that. If there's other things that the task force recommend, we can do that piece of it too through here.
I think you could take out the Peter seconded the motion part. I think that was probably just a hangover from the
Yeah,
minutes.
I just noticed that, Peter, for sure. But I like to
Oh.
include you.
Well, I'm proud to have seconded it. Let's say that.
So how would you respond to the question, why is this within the mandate of the task force?
Are you asking me specifically, Ramona?
Or the back to the original motion. I'm not saying it's a bad recommendation, but it would have to connect back to active transportation and have a justification for that.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
I just think that, in terms of active transportation, I think having us being able to be, users of all pathways in the city, I think that removing anything in place that may be some sort of a barrier. And so, I think there is only 2 locations that I understand within the city that's off leash. And so, the pathways that are there and the usage and should be accessible at all times in terms of safety for humans. That's how I viewed it. And so I have had some correspondence with Christopher Drummond at the city regarding it. And so I found that piece of information out where the 2 places that you can go off leash. And so I think that through the Active Transportation Task Force gets, part of the work that we do is to make it these pathways accessible to all users. So I see it as that's relating it directly back.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think so. All you'd need to do then was just kind of add some of that content, Margaret, just around like that it's a barrier to active transportation, it's a safety issue, and you want.
Okay, I'll do that and I'll do that and resend it, Ramona.
Why don't I just share this version with you too, and then you'll have the updated one.
Okay, thank you.
I wonder, Margaret, just reading this over now and thinking about Ramona's question, whether it might be even more valuable for us to broaden the motions so that, kind of to anticipate things that might come up in the future. I'm thinking of Frank Macaulay Park, where there's, improved AT infrastructure. I don't know if there's an off-leash issue there, but there may be. So, if we would ask the Parks and Recreation Department to ensure that where parks are identified that have active transportation pathways through them, where there's evidence or suggestion that there's off-leash activity, that appropriate steps be taken, including signage, to try and stop that.
Yeah, so get ahead of the game.
Yeah, because obviously, if it's an issue at Queen Elizabeth Park, I think it's likely an issue in other situations, and rather than having a new motion for every situation.
So it's just places that have the active pathways. If there's a path in the park, that would mean you wouldn't be able to put a leash on a dog. You can't unleash the dog because there's a little pathway in the park. Correct? Is that correct?
I think the larger issue is that none of the parks we're talking about are off-leash parks, and you're not supposed to take your dog off the leash in any of them. But I think, to Ramona's point, the reason it overlaps with the Active Transportation Task Force is because in parks where there is AT infrastructure, it becomes an even more significant safety concern, because you have people on bicycles, and bicycles and off-leash pets don't mix.
Yeah, I agree. I've yet to see anyone in something like that, but yes, that definitely would be a great idea. Okay.
I'll send it to you, Margaret.
What did you say, Ramona? I didn't hear you.
Sorry, I just said I'll send that over to you with those notes on it.
Okay.
Any more previous motions?
Not a motion, but it was for information. Under Public Works, there was a request to complete a bike tour of the city, and Margaret and Joanne had volunteered to accompany Francis Lawn resident and Mayor Brown on a bike tour. And that didn't get going on one particular Saturday. because the time got changed a couple times. And then the following Saturday, the conditions were like 8 degrees and pouring rain, and Margaret and I canceled out that morning. But I understand from the mayor that he had Mitch Underhay and Francis Lunn, and they were going to go ahead and complete their bike tour and report back to us at some point. Ramona, did you get any update from the mayor on that bike tour?
Yes. Let's see if I can bring it up here. Sorry, just give me a minute. So I got this note here from Francis sent to the mayor. Quick fixes like painting cycling logo on Belvedere Avenue to fix the parking in lane tenants in apartments. Potholes, changing rule to fine parking and cycling lanes. I think that's all I got. I don't know if I got something from Mitch also. Oh, yes, I did. Here it is. So here's a summary from Mitch Underhay. We can go through this now, or I can send this out to folks if you want to take a closer look at it.
I'm on my phone. It's hard to read the whole thing right now, so
I'd like to see a copy of it later, if that's possible.
yeah.
That would be great to have.
Have a bit later, probably be better.
Okay, I'll send that out to everybody.
Thanks, because I'd like to have that copy too.
Right. So was that all of the rising minutes or the rising news?
Excuse me. I'll add one more thing. Poor Ryan, we're never going to get on with the business at hand. The motion that I had presented concerning cutting back the shrubs between, or the bushes between Longworth Avenue and Belvedere Avenue. I did notice that the bushes have been cut back somewhat between Allen Street and Belvedere, which is a very good start. The provincial standard, according to Ruth DeLong that I had talked to, is to have the bushes cut back to the back of the ditch. And this allows for drainage, safety, health of the trail, as well as we have so many more users on the trail now. It gives them a wider expansion to walk around people or to cycle around them. However, this is just the first steps, and I very much appreciate Parks and Recreation taking the time to cut the bushes back from the trail. So that's a very good beginning. Has anybody
And
else done the trail?
One of the things I seem to notice, although it might just be the time of year, that between Longworth and Allen, there had been some cutting as well, but that might have, I don't know whether that's accurate or not. But one of the things that I did notice partly I think because I was out on the trail earlier this year, and I've noticed it in previous years, is that there is a very deep ditch that runs from Longworth along the Bar 1911 side, kind of in parallel to, kind of goes up beside the Maritime Bus parking lot there. And I've been cycling there with children, and it does feel like there should be a guardrail. I mean, the ditch is like 4 or 5 feet down, and
You
I
have
think
to intentionally go off it, but I see what you mean. Like, I've gone down there in a wheelchair. Like, if I went to look at something, I could go down. But you could say that with the UPEI, where all the foxes are in the woods there too.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's maybe more serious. I agree with you, but I think it's more serious maybe at Longworth, just because there is water in that ditch. And it kind of feels more precarious somehow. Like, I think it's a deeper section there. So that's, I think one of the things to consider is that especially if they trim back the bushes and trees on that side, it's going to make the ditch more precarious in a way. There's less of a buffer zone, so.
I absolutely agree.
Someone brought
I
it
think there has to be some kind of there has to be some kind of planning there. I do know someone that fell in the ditch there, and it was certainly not intentional. It's just you're going, two people on a bike kind of just beside, and the whatever, and they fell there. So I really would support some type of, I think you're right, Peter, there's a lot of issues, and we've seen them filling ditches in other places due to water sitting and children, that happening for them. So I would love to see something done there.
I think the time is right for that area in particular, because I think, and I remember talking to Parks and Rec about this a couple of years ago, when they built the Orla Bar sports fields. I think there was a new, basically the water drains off that parking lot and comes right down across the trail. And you'll see, like, there's a 3-foot deep pothole right on the trail there that has been kind of blockaded off. But I know from talking to Parks and Rec that drainage along that section of the trail is an issue. So if they're going to address bushes and trees and the ditch and the drainage, that's a good place to do it all.
I was talking to someone, telling them I was coming to this meeting, and they said the trees still aren't being cut back. At McAleer Drive, you pretty well have to be out onto the street before you can be seen, or that you can see. That's just what I'm being told. There's also an issue of a pothole on Riverside Drive. I can bring that up later on in the Public Works part. Anyway, I just wanted to reinforce that it appears that people are noticing that the trees still aren't really being cut, so in spots.
The original motion we had just put in from Longworth Avenue to Belvedere. So that was our request. So are they not going to go any farther with that for maintenance, or? I don't know. I guess we can discuss that. Do we need a motion again for each one of these things? Or should we put them all in another motion and just under the recommendation of trail maintenance? What's your feeling?
I wonder if it might make sense to take a beat and at a future meeting come up with kind of a set of recommendations specific to all the issues related to Confederation Trail.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know it's a busy time of year. Who did we have in to visit us from? Scott Adams is Public Works. Who did we have in a year ago from Parks and Rec? Talk to us. Does anybody remember?
I believe Frank Quinn was in. He's the manager of Parks and Rec.
But I imagine it's a busy time of year. We'd never get them anyway. So, sorry, Peter, you're suggesting that we highlight.
I'm just thinking that rather than making a set of kind of motions as they come up, is maybe for our next meeting we gather together all the issues that we know about for the Confederation Trail. There's maintenance issues, there's the trees issues, there's the ditch issues, there might be other things. I know there's the ongoing issue of the sewer fiber optic cable stuff that we might include there, and then present that all to Parks and Rec, or I guess through the E&S committee to Parks and Rec.
Sure. So maybe in the meantime, you're giving us homework that we should all take a little spin on the or a walk on the Confederation Trail and make some notes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah,
good to
I
me.
know for me, like, it would be interesting to have, like, I don't know where you would put it, but on the trail, somewhere maybe in the city, like a little place where you could like use the bathroom if you were there. Like I know sometimes there's no place like that, and having like a little bathroom area, I don't know if that might be plausible for just in the city, like outside. I don't know. I think that anyways.
That might be something to talk to the farmers market about, because they've just renovated their washrooms and they're right on the trail, and they have the coffee places now open weekdays from, I think, from 6 to 2 or something like that. So there might be
Okay.
a possibility for some cooperation there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And that's a good suggestion, Ryan. Like for instance, I know City Hall is designated for people that have Crohn's and colitis, or need to use a washroom uptown, right? And there's different parts of the trail where there are toilets,
Yeah.
out on the trail. But
Not for-
you're quite
yeah.
right. If you're cycling right through, you have to get off the trail, and it's hard because restaurants don't necessarily welcome you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, Peter, if that part of the farmer's market, is it just the window that's open for coffee, or is there more that's open?
I think right now it's just the window, and I think there would be COVID concerns now, but I think ultimately, it might be possible to negotiate public access to those washrooms. I don't know, but
Could you ask the farmer's market gentleman what he thinks about that long term?
sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Where else would be helpful, Ryan?
Being on the trails, like, yeah, just, like wheelchair, anything more wheelchair access. Like the trails overall are pretty good for the most part. I don't have much to say about the trails other than, yeah, like I haven't had any problems dealing with the trails at all. So maybe I know past, I forget the name of the street, but what's the street where like CBC is on after the farmers market, that like abandoned road, like after the rail.
Experimental Farm Road?
Yeah, the experimental farm, like past there. I always notice that the trees in that area before the highway, those bushes are kind of out there. I've noticed those ones. Yeah, and just I think something like that. Sometimes, like if you were out and you had to use the bathroom, like where do you go? There's not really a place that you can go other than like a restaurant or something. And so half the time you can't even go there accessibility wise. So that's just a concern that I like deal with. You just have to find somewhere like secluded to go, but interesting to think about it.
I think that's of particular concern to us, because if we're talking about using the trail as the kind of active transportation superhighway, you know, it's conceivable that someone would start in Sherwood or Parkdale and get on the trail and have a destination of Stratford. And yeah, I mean, if it's just recreational, that's one thing. But if, you know, if people are going a longer distance and there's no facilities along there, or if the facilities aren't obvious, you know, that it may be a signage issue, and it may be a building new things. Like maybe we need something in Joe Giz Park, or, I mean, I know that there are large.
And
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing, like we've done a cycling group and we've had our picnic in Joe Giz Park, but there's nowhere to go to the washroom, you know?
Yeah.
So everybody then has to hop in their car and go home, you know, at the end of picnic. Like there's no facility down there. That's a good suggestion.
Mhm.
I live near the Gibbs Park. Anytime you need to have facilities, you just let me know and I'll pop my door lock with my phone and you can go in.
That's very generous of you, Jason. Thank you.
Are you making that recommendation to all members of the city, all residents of the city who are listening?
No, actually, it's to this committee, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, that. Yeah. So are we all done of arising business? Sounds like it. Okay. Next, update on the terms of reference. What do we have for that?
I can take that, Ryan. So I just wanted to let folks know we did bring the terms of reference update to our last Environment Sustainability Committee meeting. So we took the updates that Joanne had provided on progress to date by the committee. And I did I talked to the committee about a couple of things that I think would improve the function of the task force. So right now, how it works is with me as the sort of point of contact, and then having to go through each respective, through our committee and then go to each committee. I feel like it's sort of an unnecessary layer of bureaucracy, and it doesn't really reflect how active transportation works within the organization, and that we have different departments responsible for different areas. So what I recommended to them was a change in terms of, rather than having each meeting where I'm present, to have 4 meetings a year that would have one of the managers or the chief of each of the relevant departments. So you'd have one meeting a year with the public works manager, one meeting with the Parks and Rec manager, one with police, and one with environment sustainability. And I mean, if there was another needed, then you could meet again, but just the intent would be that you would have access for sure to each of those departments once per year, and that the committee could continue to meet monthly if you so choose between those meetings to kind of plan, like, even when you're talking about, you know, the Confederation Trail or recommendations to Parks and Rec, I think it would be more efficient to have sort of all your recommendations for Parks and Rec sort of compiled and ready to go in one meeting. You can kind of talk about the issues of that committee and then report directly to them. Because what I'm kind of finding is, you know, having everything come through our department, where we really have a very small mandate under active transportation. Our group, for us, we're specific to cycling only, not active transportation, and we are around cycling safety and awareness, rather than, you know, Public Works that does infrastructure, and Parks and Rec that does trails, and police that does enforcement. So that was the recommendation that I made, and it did get the endorsement of the ENS committee, and then it was forwarded to the Council Advisory Committee, and they had some additional questions, so now it has to come back to us. But my hope in that is that then you would have recommendations made to each department, and then you would go directly to that standing committee rather than having to funnel each of them through ENS. And I think it would build a better accountability between each department in the task force, and also give more, less sort of steps, I guess, to get directly to the responsible department. So that's just an update on that. And if there's any questions, we can chat about it.
I have one, and so like if we're going department at a time, like, and if we're saying each one's going to be a certain month of the year, like, would we want to bank all our information on like police for that meeting so that we would have like a full meeting on that subject and kind of do it in that way, like bank our some of our information for that specific meeting with that, or is how would you kind of go that way? You know what I mean?
That's what I was kind of picturing, Ryan, is that, you know, you would be preparing between these meetings with the department heads. You would be, you know, reviewing best practices from other places, reviewing things that are happening here, and coming up with your recommendations for that area. Then you'd have an opportunity to meet with the police chief and talk about your concerns. And then afterwards, you could prepare like a committee report that would go specifically to police services with your recommendations, versus kind of having it come through ENS and then go to police services. And then with that, and then you could meet in between again as much as you needed. And if you needed another meeting with those department heads, you could. But I think how I worded was a minimum of one meeting per year with each of the departments.
So you said
Okay.
every 4 months?
I said a minimum of once per year. So I was suggesting that you do quarterly meetings, one with each of the departments. And then
Right.
you could have as many other meetings as you wanted on top of that, but you wouldn't necessarily have a department head at that meeting. You would have the
Right.
meetings.
Because sometimes I find a month is too short, but other times things arise in the middle, you know, for us to talk. So it would be good if our group could meet. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be this type of meeting, but to have some meetings, you know, a bit more frequently, I think would be advantageous, because like, you know, things come up in the summer, or you notice things and you kind of want to get some consensus on that. As long as we can meet up. I mean, we can, if we were to do a meeting like that, like, is that something that we have to do through WebEx, or can we do a Teams meeting on that, or how does that work?
I don't know the answer to that, Jason. Like, I don't know whether like how many of your meetings you have to make public. But I can get that information, because it's not one I know the answer to. I think you would do your meetings with the department heads publicly, but if you were meeting without a member of council or a member of staff present, I don't think you would have to have it live streamed. But I'll check into that and confirm.
Yeah, if you can email me, that would be super. And we could set up, you know, impromptu Teams meetings really easily. The program's really great for that. At work, we have pop-in meetings with teams all the time. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to have I know we have a format for this, which I can see working very well for the, you know, quarterly meetings. But if we all kind of want to get together and throw some stuff against the wall, that might be a bit more productive in kind of moving some stuff along.
I would just like to say that I find having structure, as we do for the task force, works very well. I find when you know you've got a meeting once a month, you should be doing some sort of preparation for the meeting. Otherwise, it goes by the wayside. So certainly, Ramona, I think that's a great suggestion, that we have an opportunity to meet with the department heads 4 times a year. But I think somewhere along the way, it should be that the task force continues to meet as a committee for the months in between, except I think last year we took August off, and, you know, depends on what you want to do, but I think we deserve either July or August off for sure. And but with that exception, I think the only way to keep our momentum, and as things come up, deal with it, because that's the whole thing. We want to be vibrant and we want to stay active, but on the other hand, Jason, please don't take any offense. I don't want to be dealing with this with all the people like every week, you know, that sort of thing. I think if I know that I have something that I'm responsible for, then yes, you know, I can email one or two members, which we do amongst ourselves quite often. When we're working on resolutions or working on finances or working on a proposal, that's worked really, really well. But I do think, Ramona, we do sort of need the continued structure in there. We don't have to have a council person or you there, but if somebody would just continue to book a room for us or book a webinar for us so we have a regular meeting. That's my feeling.
You can still have a regular meeting. That's not what I was saying. What I'm saying is that we can set, like right now, if we have to have a meeting, we have to wait for the city to set it up for us, which I find sometimes doesn't quite work out. So if we can do these things ourselves, which it makes it very easy to do. The other thing they've done with Teams recently is they allow closed captioning. So you can actually record the text of the whole meeting and it'll automatically give you the meeting notes. So you don't have to have anybody keeping notes for you. At the end of it, you can just save them. So if we did want to refer back to it, we can. Like we can still do a month or every month and a half or 2 months. I like structure. Times are good. I'm just saying that we have options that we don't have to. We don't have to have the city do that for us.
I
And
also
just,
think that if you're going to bank some of the information for a certain time when a person from that part of the city group comes in to talk to us, like the severity of the issue might get a little dubbed because you waited a month until Buddy was there for the meeting, rather than dealing with it right away. That might be an issue, but maybe not.
yeah. And to clarify, Joanne, like you would still have access to Doug. So Doug Dumais would still send out as if you wanted to keep the regular monthly meeting, right? So in the terms of reference, it really is up to the committee to determine how often they want to meet. I think it's required that you meet no fewer than bi-monthly, I think is what it says, but the task force determined they wanted to meet monthly at the beginning, so that's why we've been meeting monthly. So in terms of having someone check in on the agenda and send out the minutes from the last meeting and set up the WebEx, that would be available to you if you wanted to use that. But to Jason's point, you could also use different tools. And just on your point, Ryan, I don't think that removes the other channels that you have for communicating. If there was something emergency that needed to be resolved, like something needed to be done sooner than later, you still have sort of department liaisons on this committee that can reach out on behalf of the group to follow up. I think it's just ensuring that you have access for a dedicated conversation with that specific department related to AT concerns at least once a year.
So maybe that you could have it on like severity level. If the severity level is like medium, it can just go to that upcoming meeting or section for that specific department. And if it's higher up on the severity level, it can go to them right away, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I do know we are coming up at the end of our 2-year term, so not all of you have reoffered at this point. Just so I am trying to get sort of some direction in terms of when they'll do another call for new members, like they did last time. But that decision hasn't been set yet, but we've only had 2 of our members say they didn't want to reoffer, and we are allowed to run meetings between 5 and 7 members. So if there is a gap of time where we're down to 5 members, well, you're still functional and you're still legitimate, I guess, in the eyes of the terms of reference.
Okay. And I'm pretty sure that I said I would do it again. Yeah, I didn't sign anything or anything if I had to.
No, I don't think so. I just did an informal check-in with you all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ramona, this is as good a time as any to ask. I think because I'm one of the people not reoffering, in your email back, you had said that it was unclear as to whether should the terms of those not reoffering end. Would this be our last meeting, or would next month be our last meeting, or what's specified there?
Heather asked me the same question today, so I'll just say that, again, I haven't really gotten any clear response on how they want to address that, but because the committee is functional with 5 members, I'll leave it up to those members who are not reoffering to decide when they'd like their last meeting to be. There's no obligation for you to continue, for any members to continue, if they're no longer wanting to be part of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So is that all we have for update on the terms of reference?
That's all the update I have.
Okay. So moving on to reporting from department liaisons. First one is Public Works. Do we have a Public Works report?
Nothing that I've talked to anybody about. I was concerned about and I know I was trying to figure out, Ramona, do you know on St. Peter's Road, that construction, that's all provincial. Although beside Andrews Pond, there's kind of a gated road there. Do you know if that road is going to become part of the trail once they're done construction?
Like, you mean like right after you're heading out St. Peter's Road, and it's sort of right after you go over the bridge, and it's on your
It's just
left-hand side?
It's on the right-hand side if you're going down the hill past KFC. And it's not the side where the apartment buildings are, but it's on the other side where Mr. Andrews' house is, and he has that pond in the backyard. And on one side of it, there's and it's been closed for years. And I was wondering, is that going to be opened up, do you know, and attached to the trail?
I don't know. I know what you're talking about, Jason, but I don't know. Sorry.
I just didn't know if that was a provincial or a city.
It would be municipal. I know that a part of the property was gifted to the city from the Andrews sort of homestead, but I just don't know if that piece is part of it.
Okay. Yeah, it's a nice walk through there. I was just curious if it was going to be attached or not. And yeah, the only other thing was what Peter had said about the trail. Because I know I have seen it throughout the city, the fiber optic cable burying is quite the mess, and it has caused some issues in different places. So if we're going to kind of focus on that trail and maybe come up with the next meeting of something that, you know, a list we could put forth to the city, I think that would be super helpful. Because I know I've been out on the trail a few times now and in the areas, and also the construction for the bridge. I know they're working on the Stratford side. Is there any movement on the Charlottetown side where some of the more poor areas are on the existing trail? Do you know if they're going to be working on those soon?
Do you mean along Riverside Drive, or do you mean the connection to the Hillsborough Bridge?
On Riverside Drive, we talked about it before. There were some areas where we kind of said it's getting poor with the pavement getting broken up there.
Yeah, and that might be what Heather was talking about with the pothole. Is that on Riverside Drive also?
It's along by like EMCO, or the fertilizer plant in that area.
Peter's brought that issue up before.
Okay.
So
yeah,
we had, just what I know on the Hillsborough Bridge, we had a meeting last week sort of with stakeholders to talk about the launch of the Hillsborough Bridge. So
okay.
It's like end of June, and
Oh, good.
our public works staff was in the room too, and noted that we will have to have our Riverside Drive piece all ready to go and
Great.
repaired. So I'm assuming that will be part of it.
Good,
Thank you.
I
fantastic.
have a question, or I don't want to interrupt you, Jason.
No, go ahead.
I took the Riverside Drive Trail out to Murchison and then kind of went out back of Hillsborough Hospital and into like Hillsborough Park area. And just to take a look at the new trail, I don't know what we call it, but like the extension of the Riverside Drive Trail that goes on the north side, which is still, it's hard packed gravel, but you can cycle it now. And I noticed that there's, is it Pioneer Drive? No, it's not Pioneer Drive. It's basically, it's the way that if you're a vehicle, you get from the Carrefour onto bypass. I don't know the name of the road there, but it's, or sorry, it's the other way around. It's the way that you get off the bypass into the Carrefour. It's a one-way off the bypass, not onto the bypass. And I wondered, Ramona, if you knew whether there's going to be any provision for getting from that area onto the trail, because right now you'd have to go the wrong way down a one-way street. If this is too confusing, I can send you a map that illustrates it.
No, I know what you're talking about. That piece is called Acadian Drive too.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that is part of phase one. So it'll be continued down onto, it's called Acadian Drive and it connects to Acadian Drive.
Okay.
But essentially, if you're coming off the bypass highway, you'll be able to either continue along the bypass highway or you'll be able to veer off to the right and go down to Acadian Drive, the French school, and then go back along the existing trail network along the water.
But will you be able to get from Acadian Drive onto the trail, like the exact opposite of what you're talking about?
It'll be, even though it's a one-way street, it's a two-way.
Oh, it's a two-way trail,
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question that rose out of that was just anticipating, I guess, phase two, maybe it's called, which would be from St. Peter's Road to Mount Edward Road. Do you know has there been any engineering work there to suggest just generally where that AT path would be? Like, is it actually going to be parallel to the bypass, or is it going to have to veer off because of the bridge, the Oak Drive Bridge?
Yeah, so we're kind of in the final steps of design for phase two. So it's going to go down Norwood Road. So it won't go along the bypass highway in that section. It's too narrow. We can't get around the overpass. So it'll go down Norwood Drive and then it'll come back, like essentially where you turn to go over the overpass to get over to Stone Park. It'll cut across that road and then it'll continue along the edge of the airport property.
Oh, okay,
So
great.
back along the bypass highway. And that section is not actually going to Mount Edward Road. So this section will go to Brackley Point Road. And then it'll turn at Brackley Point Road and connect to the existing trail to the Brackley Commons. There's like a gap of a couple kilometers, maybe not even a couple kilometers there. And then for phase three, it'll be the last small piece, which is essentially from Brackley Point Road to Mount Edward Road.
But basically, you'll be able to eventually go from the airport to like the McDonald's quarter in Stratford without ever hitting all on an AT path. That's great.
Yeah, and you'll be able to do a whole loop, right? Like a D-shaped loop with the Confederation Trail too.
Right. I had one more thing under Public Works, just a question about, is there a policy about and who should problems be reported to about sewer, like sunken sewer grates or sewer grates not put perpendicular to the way that bicycle tires would go through them?
So it is Public Works, and I guess it would just be Public Works manager.
Okay, because I did notice I was coming down St. Peter's Road from like Home Hardware to Longworth, and there are places there where there's a 3 or 4 inch deep sunken sewer grate. And I know the mayor had mentioned that one of the issues that come up on the ride that Joanne was talking about was a similar observation. So,
Where was that at? You said it was by Home Hardware?
If you cycle down the cycle lane on the, what I guess would be the western side from Home Hardware to Longworth Avenue, like I'm thinking around where the auto parts store is, like around the Irving there's one, and then there's another one by the car wash. You know, it's a wide bicycle lane, so you can cycle around them. But if you don't know they're there and it's dark,
Right.
you know, you can get thrown off your bike very easily there.
Okay. Well, maybe I can reach out and see if, is that something I need to reach out, Ramona, or is that something that you're in contact with them about?
If you want to send the information to me, like Peter, if you have like a picture or something, or if you even have the locations noted,
Yeah,
you can send it
sure.
to me and I can forward it along to Scott.
I'll do that directly. Yeah.
And that type of thing was mentioned like 2 years ago to me a couple of times by different people on Lower Malpac Road. There was a couple of instances like that, and it could be repaired by now. I don't know. But just maybe making Public Works aware that that's a concern among cyclists. That's a very good point. Ramona, I had a question. Is this part of phase 1 or phase 2? The part of along Riverside Drive, the arterial highway, the hospital up to Pioneer or whatever, they're digging along there. Is that active transportation that they're working on now?
Yeah, so they were doing some district heat pipe work,
Yes.
and then now they're digging up the path part now.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Okay. And before moving to Parks and Rec here, as you were talking about, I just want to clarify the pathway connected on Norwood Road. Like, does that have anything to do with like because you were talking about a path from the airport, along that as well? Does that include like where at the top of Norwood, where like that junkyard path that would take you all the way around? Are they going to make a path in that area too, or is that still going to be like a junkyard road? Or is that...
I'll just bring it up and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so right now the path comes along. Everybody see my cursor? Okay, so it comes along here. It goes down past the KFC to the roundabout. And then what's going to happen is it's going to go down Norwood Road. And then at Norwood Road, it's going to cross right over here. And then there's like a berm up here. It's going to run on the top of the berm to the Brackley Point Road. And then it goes out Brackley Point Road to Maple Hills, where the other trail passes. So it's not going to go up Norwood Road this way, Ryan. It's only going to go as far as the intersection of Norwood Road and Oak Drive, and this is the overpass. So it'll come across here, and then there'll be a cut through here, and then we'll go down there. We just couldn't make it happen here. And honestly, I think this design will be good because then it'll be a good collector connection too to all these folks in here.
Mm-hmm.
And you can connect to the nature trails also then that way.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay. And so next, moving on, what do you have for Parks and Recreation?
I have nothing to report other than those issues we've talked about already with regard to the trail and to Queen Elizabeth Park.
I wasn't speaking to anyone either. I don't have anything. Next, police.
Just before we speed along, just a second, slow down. So Heather, the remarks, the things that were pointed out to you, we're going to save and bring that back all together. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
No report from the police department.
Okay.
I had
Okay.
I had a couple of issues, Margaret. I wanted to ask about, or one to ask about, one to mention. I had asked Scott Adams of Public Works about the, I think they're called speed radar displays. There's one, they're around the city. There's one on, or there's two on North River Road. There's one on Beach Grove. And I was just interested to know if the data from those was available, because I think, you know, if they're going 24/7 and they're measuring people's speed, it would be good to know what people's speed is. And Scott told me that that's not actually a Public Works thing, it's a city police thing. And so I, as a private citizen, made an access request to city police, and if I get that, I'll bring that information forward. So just to let people know that. The second thing was, I have noticed more this year than maybe ever before, and it might be because there's a building boom, but contractor trucks seem to pay no heed to cycle lanes. And they're not the only ones, but I've noticed more of it this year. But, you know, on Queen Elizabeth Drive, I noticed it out on Oak Drive, especially in areas where the cycle lane is really the only safe place to travel because the road is so narrow. You know, if you're coming along and you have to veer out into traffic as a cycle, it's not safe. I would like to know from the police department whether it's possible, like what should we do anything? Can we do anything about that? Like, is that a parking offense? And do we call the bylaw enforcement officer, or do we call police, or do we call no one? Or
I will, I'll call the bylaw officer and just
Okay.
ask for that. And regarding the first, about the reports, I will check on, the latest report. I received them from, Mike Duffy. I do not know if that is in there about those signage, but I will definitely look for that and I'll send it out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Note keeper, so I was writing quickly as you were speaking, Peter. Queen Elizabeth Drive, and should we ask someone about the bylaw officer in conjunction with, what was it, a parking infringement? What was it you brought up?
Well, when there are vehicles parked in marked cycle lanes, what
Okay.
should the citizens, how can the citizen have that addressed?
Thank you.
Well, we
It's
could go
very
to,
apparent down on Water Street right now, where they're putting up, it's extremely dangerous down there currently. And they're right on top of the parking, or the stop sign, and I witnessed two cars come right through the stop sign there, driving towards, the Delta. Cause there's a big truck in front of it. And I was by 3 hours in between that trip I took, and the truck was there the whole time, or it appeared to be. So I will ask for sure.
Thank you.
And just an observation, all the way back to Public Works, I want to say that I've seen 2 sweepers out going during the day, and it's very encouraging. They're doing the bike lanes. Particularly, they did one side of Mount Edward Road, they did Maple Avenue, and it looks like it was a brand new sweeper truck. It's great. It's small, and it's doing the bike lanes, and I've seen the bigger one on the go too. So it's very encouraging to see those that equipment. Like, I mean, they've got a whole city to deal with, but to see that equipment working, like, it's very encouraging.
They've also swept the Hillsborough Bridge pathway as far as the other side of the navigation span. So if you want to try that out, it's possible to cycle that now without an inch of gravel on it. So.
And if you want to drive your car across that without getting stuck in the big ruts there in the bridge, they have, put some temporary paving over them too.
okay, so next after that would be sustainability.
Oh,
we have,
I don't know if I'm supposed to speak or not, but I think we've covered a lot under sustainability. Ramona's giving us a lot of information and updates, but I do have a question for Ramona. Where are we at with the bike week planning?
So Katrina's continuing to work on that, and she's gonna present a draft of the Bike Week plans at our ENS committee next week. But I know we met, this group met with her, as well as the Bike Friendly Charlottetown also met with us to go over some ideas to include. But like, I don't want to let all the everything out into the public yet, because we're excited to announce it. But I think there'll be lots in there that you'll be happy about. And I can forward along a message that Katrina shared with Bike Friendly Charlottetown on some of the things we have planned.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Sustainability? Okay, moving on. Cycling PEI.
Nothing there.
Okay. And
I'll just sorry, Ryan, I'll just add one thing with it's kind of cycling PEI, it's kind of, but I just thought of it anyway. Remember we had met with Graham Miner about e-bike regulation, so that has kind of been resurfaced, and I know that our Public Works and Police and Cycling PEI all met with Graham again last week, and they are hoping to get a draft together sooner than later on they're actually hoping to get a draft of some of the legislation ready in advance of the Hillsborough Bridge opening, so that they can say from the get-go who's allowed and not allowed on the bridge.
Right.
I don't know if they'll meet that deadline or not, but I just wanted to let you know that that is moving along quickly.
That's good to hear, because I was at, an informal dinner the other night, and there were like, people were mentioning how 3 or 4 of their neighbors have all bought e-bikes. It was also suggested and brought up to me that once that bridge pathway opens, that's where the cyclists are going to be coming across the bridge, because the delays in the traffic are so horrendous getting across to Charlottetown in the morning, that they're going to be wanting, regular bike, e-bike, whatever, wanting to be on that pathway. So yeah, that's.
I hope that's true. I hope a lot of people are. I think my understanding is if we're talking about pedal assist e-bikes, you're going to be good to go. It's the other ones that don't require the pedaling or that have fake pedals that will probably get heavily regulated.
I had just an informal conversation with the mayor recently because I had a friend who was a pedestrian talk to me. She asked me whether it was going to be possible to walk across the AT path across the bridge, because that hadn't been the emphasis. And I reassured her that yes, it's a multi-use path. But I think that drove home she expressed some misgivings about sharing a path with e-bikes, especially, and because you're over water and it kind of feels unsafe. And I think the point that I made to her, and I think the agreement that the mayor and I kind of reached, is that we can build the infrastructure, we can provide regulations as to who's allowed to use the infrastructure, but there's a lot of cultural stuff that has to do with just etiquette and sharing and good behavior and use of bells and not running people over that now, we the people need to take over responsibility for.
I totally agree with you on that. Like, even with me myself being in a wheelchair, like I take up a fair amount of space sometimes, and if I'm going down and there's just somebody on a bike, like there has to be a who's gonna move out of the way, and is he gonna be speeding and expect me to move out of the way? You got there has to be a sharing of the space kind of thing with that, and it's kind of a social thing that needs to be explained a little, kind of in the same realm of bike helmets. Like a little bit of that, I think, needs to incorporate when it's actually made and ready to go, just so that we don't have some fender benders that could have been prevented if it wasn't that information wasn't sent out to the public and utilized for the safety reasons.
Well said,
That's
Ryan.
excellent information, Ryan. What is the strategy around that, Ramona? Like, is there, I mean, there's lots of work that has been done and, around about education and that type of thing. Is there a plan to have any type of education around that for the general public? I know we do all have a responsibility, but in terms of, Ryan says there's a bit of that courtesy and whatnot. So is there a plan from the city of Charlottetown to share some information around that?
We definitely do lots of education during Bike Week, and I can kind of mention that too to Katrina, that in some of our messaging we can get to, courtesy, respect, sharing space, and incorporating that message into what we're putting out.
I think to some extent it's a new set of problems. Like having active transportation congestion is a great problem to have. It's just that, it's only recently that I've realized that pedestrians appreciate it when I ring my bell when I'm coming up behind them, because I'm not frightening them. I used to think it was like they would think it was showy or something, but every time I do it, people thank me. So I think we just need to get used to that.
I agree. I don't even have a bell, but when I'm behind people, before I get close, I go ding ding.
Yeah.
People do appreciate the fact that there's something.
For sure.
Will you notify
one-
City Police, Margaret, that Jason doesn't have a bell?
Well, I'm one of those ones, if you came up behind me and I probably wouldn't even hear you.
'Cause you have the air
And I'd be
in.
the one who would, if you were beside me and I felt you and looked, I'd be the one that would scream. That can scare the person on the bike. So I totally appreciate that. But I'll report that to the bylaw officer regarding
Thank you, Mark.
Jason.
Sorry, Jason.
That's okay. Believe me, ding
I-
ding work. People
Yeah.
appreciate ding ding. It's more personal.
I know specifically in that vein, a concern was mentioned by another cyclist who uses the bridge. But a lot of people who walk will use. Sorry, can you hear me? A lot of people that walk.
You're underwater.
Gary, can you try again, please?
Yep. Hang on.
There we
you
go.
are.
Yep.
I'm back. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
There you go.
I didn't do anything.
Mhm.
Okay. So, yeah, just like on that vein, one issue is that people walk with headphones in, and even if you have the bell and you're dinging, then they just don't hear you. And so that, I don't know if that can be part of the messaging, is maybe have one headphone out of your ear or something whenever you're in these sorts of paths. I don't know, but it was brought up at a recent meeting from that perspective.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And,
Would you
but
call it
also,
a hazard? Is that what we're saying about headphones can be a hazard when you're out walking? What would you call it?
I guess
Potential hazard. How about that? Potential hazard.
Yeah.
No, that's a good
Well,
point, that it's not just cyclists who need to learn etiquette, it's pedestrians too.
Yeah, but if the cyclist is cycling and making the noise and the person doesn't hear him, like he has to realize that he can't just bump into him and keep on going. Like you're eventually gonna have to wave him down, or I think that's something that you'd have to. I think the average person would do that most, hopefully. Yeah.
I have another point, and again, this will be up under sustainability, but
Okay.
Ramona, in the messaging during Bike Week, and I think this is especially true for pedestrians, people should be encouraged to wear bright clothing so they're visible. Unfortunately, I found out today I had a good friend in Sydney who was out walking. He's always walked his whole life. He's like some people in the room, he hardly ever drives a car. Unfortunately, he was hit by a car in Sydney, and he is now in the QE2 with a broken hip and serious brain injury, unfortunately, as a result of a car hitting a pedestrian. And I'm so disappointed. I mean, I don't know what Ian was wearing or not wearing, but I mean, we know you're supposed to make eye contact with the driver before you cross, anywhere. And I don't know if this driver just came out of nowhere. I don't know the whole story. It was on CBC, just that this had happened, the CBC News. But I just can't say it enough. Like our seniors, especially, black coats are not the way to go for an elderly person crossing a crosswalk. They should be wearing gold or white or, a visible color. And I think it's true of our children on bicycles. Anybody, bright clothing, you're way more visible. So it's that type of messaging, if that could be put out there too.
I
Yep.
have a lot of
Joanne,
stuff.
idea, Joanne.
Yeah, like I know myself, I'm just kind of in the process of getting a new wheelchair, and I'm looking into a new addition on my wheelchair. It's called Super Drive, and it's like a little wheel that I can attach to the back of my chair that kind of makes me go faster, and I don't have to push as much. And if I'm going to be like, I think I can get like 4 miles an hour if I really want to using this thing, and it'll be great on the path. But in order for me to use that, I'm going to need to wear brighter things so people can see me. And it's definitely something that more people need to do, especially bikers or anyone that's uh, can go to a certain speed, whether it's 2 miles an hour or 3 miles an hour. I think that should be definitely kind of mandatory or um, along that line. Definitely. Okay. And what do we have for bike-friendly Charlottetown?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
take it
Okay.
away.
I just wanted to mention that we have a few things coming up. We are seeking volunteers. We're working with Vélo Canada Bikes, which is a cross Canada organization. They do something called a pedal pool, first weekend of July, which is basically just they're basically taking a survey of how many cyclists are at certain points around the city, and they're doing this in all like the capital cities across Canada. So we are
Excuse me
working
for interrupting, Carrie.
Yep.
First week of June.
first weekend of June. And so they basically, we're just looking for some volunteers to do some shifts where you would have a clipboard and hang out at a given corner and make note of the cyclists that you see there. If anybody's interested, I can hook you up with the information on that. We are planning to have sort of a celebratory, what we're calling the bridge ride, when that bridge path opens, which will be all are welcome, and a very casual but celebratory event. And we're just sort of, ideally we'll do that kind of in conjunction with what is being planned by the powers that be, but depending on the timing and everything of that, we'll see how that goes. But that's what's coming up in June for us.
That's all exciting. My husband and I signed up for Vélo Canada, and we're doing a training webinar. I think it's a week from Thursday night on how to push the button on the app on our phone to identify if it's a female, a male, or other, And the second thing is to identify if it's a senior, an adult, or a child. And the third thing is to identify if it's somebody who's white, black, indigenous, Asian, North Asian, South Asian. They said that they also wanted to put some other demographics in there. I can't imagine how I'm ever going to distinguish any of that with somebody with sunglasses and a bike helmet on, whipping by on a bicycle. But anyway, those were the three categories that were to select on our phone. Are you short on volunteers? Like, I belong to 2 bike groups. I could ask them to go on the website, if there's any participants. How is your response coming on that? Sorry, I can't hear you, Carrie. Can you try again, please?
Can you hear me now?
No.
The headphone.
Okay.
Headphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's my computer audio. I think we're doing okay for volunteers, but I think they are still looking for a few more. I'm not actually on this committee that's running it, but I can find out. But certainly, Joanne, if you have people that you think would be interested, you could share the information.
Send them an email.
Yeah.
The other thing is, do you have an operational plan for the bridge ride with the chief public health officer?
We will, yes, but we've been waiting. Yeah, we know we have to do that for group events, so that's on our radar. We are really kind of waiting to see not only when the bridge is going to open, but what the plans are for the official opening, to see how we can dovetail with that.
Because there again, it can take 2 weeks to get your plan approved.
Okay.
Just heads up.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that all for Bike Friendly Charlottetown? Well, I guess. Okay. Next, new business. Do we have any new business?
Ramona, I wondered, I was over in Stratford today and I noticed that there are some new AT paths going up there, like I think the Georgetown Road is having something attached to it. And I know we were supposed to have someone from Warren Grove come to talk to us, but that was canceled just because I guess their original plan fell through. But it does kind of beg the question whether it might be a good idea for this task force at some point either to get updated or to have a joint meeting with, Cornwall, Stratford, Warren Grove, Brackley, Milton Vale Park, like all the abutting municipalities, just to kind of see where we join up on AT.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Is that kind of like, is there any kind of capital region active transportation working group or anything like that at your level, or?
When the active transportation, the regional active transportation plan came out, that was kind of before my time working on this file, but there was a committee formed for the implementation of that. I don't know how long they were in place, but typically kind of how it's been, like, I talked to Cornwall and Stratford a lot on transit, because transit's one of my files too. So it's the same people I would talk to about AT. And then also we get pulled into the meetings with the province. Like, for instance, on the opening of the Hillsborough Bridge path. So we talked about what each of us have in mind on either side of it, but nothing formal currently.
It'd be interesting, just as I'm thinking about this, it would be interesting once the Hillsborough Bridge path opens to figure out what is actually the longest possible distance you can ride uninterrupted on an AT pathway.
I know. Well, we're really close to be able to get from Stratford to Cornwall. Like there's the missing piece on Capitol Drive, which we want
Right.
to do. And then Cornwall's there's a piece missing kind of from the beginning of Cornwall to the Save Easy essentially in Cornwall. And then that piece will be done too. But I think really, if you think about the Confederation Trail, you could come from Hunter River to
Oh, that's
to
true.
Stratford, right? Or
Do you know if this is outside of the city limits, but there is that trail that runs out to the Brackley Commons, and then it runs well beyond that as well. Is the plan ever that that's going to go all the way to Brackley Beach, or that there's a way to get by AT to the beach?
it would be amazing. I know the only person I've ever talked to about that project would be Ruth DeLong, and I think the intent was always that they would want to get all the way, but my understanding is there's a couple land issues that they haven't been able to get past, but I don't know if work is ongoing on that file or if that's a quiet file. I wouldn't know.
Okay.
But it would be amazing if you could bike. There'd be another reason to have an e-bike if you could get from Charlottetown to Brackley, and then you've got that path that runs like all through the national park.
That's
once you're
right.
out there.
Yeah.
Any other new business?
Carrie was going to bring up the brainstorming ideas.
Yes.
Yeah, this doesn't have to take very long. I just thought it might be nice for us to kind of take a quick look at this document we put together way back at the beginning. I'm looking for it now. Hang on. Can I do this? Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just see, there are things on here we've done, and there are things we kind of forgot we ever said, maybe, and just see if there's anything that jumps out, that something that we might like to tackle in the next year or two, or yeah. So I thought we could just take a look. I know we're getting late in the evening now. I believe. Go ahead.
Sorry, just quickly before it's on my brain. Ramona, the signage for last year that was supposed to go up that didn't go up because of COVID, where is that at?
It's all here, and they're going to pick away at it this spring and finish it up in the fall.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So I really, jump in if something jumps out at you that you're like, oh, that's a cool thing. The signage is happening, I think. The bike lane map online, printable from online. I know there's a new. Anyway, yeah, you guys can look at it. I also can put it in the chat, can I, when I'm doing this? Maybe not. So that you could look at it yourself. Is there anything jumping out at anyone? It looks like something, or you can say, hey, we did that.
Ramona, I'm sorry that I ask this every meeting, but do you know if there's been any movement on the moving of the Joe Giz bicycle repair stand to the market?
I don't. I've made that inquiry a number of times.
Okay.
I'm just scrolling slowly. You can.
Look, multi-use paths, new policy to replace sidewalks with multi-purpose paths.
Yeah, I just noticed that. We did that. I think the things in bold were things we must have identified as important, or maybe they were mentioned multiple times by multiple people when we did this exercise.
I think identify connectors, that's a slow process, but I would say if you look back to our first meeting and where we're at now, at the new AT infrastructure and the planned AT infrastructure, it's pretty impressive what has happened. I mean, not necessarily because of us, but we've been there to witness it.
I think you're right. I think we're in a different place now altogether with this.
Oh, and
process.
I like this one. Advocate for multi-use path connections. Okay, Capitol Drive, North River Road, and behind the Botox Place to Water Street. Well, the last time I cycled down Weymouth Street a few weeks ago, I noticed that there's a bigger sign up there to show that little connector there over to Grafton Street. The only thing was the sign, it's like aluminum or steel or metal anyway, and it's a bit bent, I think, from the snow or something over the winter, but at least it's there and you see it and you know that that's a path. And so I was really delighted to see that.
Is that the Roots for Nature and Health sign?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. That's always been there. It's just I think it fell off, and I think when the maintenance people were doing the landscaping, I think it got put back up.
Okay. Well, and that's a whole mouthful, Peter, the Roots for Nature and Health. Like, I still, when I say that sometimes that I've got it now, people say, what are you talking about? I'd say, oh, it's where you can hike and walk, the Roots for Nature and Health. But anyway, it's not a buzzword and everybody's everyday lingo, but I know the city people know what we mean.
I was going to say that under capital infrastructure, come up with a plan for cycle hubs with parking, repair station, water fountains, etc., like a farmer's market. So just and back to Ryan's point about having accessibility, to be able to get off and use the washroom if you want. I definitely have noticed some parking. It's mostly rural that I've noticed it, but I definitely am seeing where there is space being made along the trails for parking because people would be pulled up on the side of the road type of thing. Yeah, it's kind of that term just sort of jumped out at me at cycle hubs where there's a repair station, a water station, and I'd love to add in there washroom facilities.
Yeah.
And do you know, speaking of that, what I've noticed recently is a lot of people park at the back of the Charlottetown Mall and access the trail. That's where they park. And I never clued it. Of course, I live in Sherwood, so we just walk over, but that's where a lot of people park is right there and access. So, that's a good place. You don't have to pay for parking right there where Sport Check is and the furniture place. I don't even know anymore if there's accessible like washrooms in the mall. You'd have to go all the way into the mall, right? If there's public washrooms.
Yeah. Or UPEI, but I don't even think you can use that.
I don't know where you go at UPEI. I guess to the student union building, but you probably wouldn't be allowed in there if you weren't a member.
Engineering. You could get in the engineering building. I think if if we tried, that would be, I would see it as the closest one, like and connected to the Mount. The Mount, I'm not sure, you'd have to go all the way around in the back way there, but the engineering building, I believe they have security in there all the time too. And if I recall correctly, I believe that's pretty accessible right on the main level there. That might be a place to be marked. It would be really neat if it could ever, have a list and sort of like, hey, when you're here, you can go over there and get in there. So I'm not sure of the weekend or the night use over there. But I
They
think
also
that
have
building is well used.
They have a bike repair, one of the same bike repair things in front of the engineering building too. So that'd be a good hub.
Yeah. They have some great space there, and to be able to connect with them would be awesome.
I noticed that under capital infrastructure, some of those routes that are suggested, they're not really any that are on the radar, unless I'm mistaken, for being built. Ramona, is that any of those kind of on the radar, or was that just us throwing out ideas? Or, for example, North River Road.
Yeah, I don't know if we've talked about North River Road. Well, I mean, we've talked about the unfortunateness of like the wideness and the narrowness of it. But I don't know if we talked about dedicated multi-use or anything along there.
Mm-hmm.
I can say
I think-
anecdotally, just because I drive that stretch of North River Road almost every morning now, and I probably say from Nassau to north to Beech Grove, I probably see half a dozen cyclists every morning there. So braving that dangerous gauntlet.
I understand that the property across the street was sold there, and I did have that thought. You know, would there ever be any consideration there to you know, even that little bit of it to since I believe it's going to be new construction, to widen that and make that an AT pathway, just from the kind of the onset of the trees there right till you get up to Beech Grove Road.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. I think what'll end up happening on North River Road at some point is when the sidewalk needs to be replaced, one side will stay as sidewalk and one side will be converted to multi-use. That would be my guess.
That would be great if they would do that.
There already is a, not to reuse the term, but there is a Roots for Nature and Health trail that goes from Ellen's Creek. It hugs the shore and that just comes to an end in an apartment building parking lot there. It's tantalizingly close to Queen Elizabeth Park there. Like if you could ever bridge that gap, then that would be a lovely way of getting south.
Okay, I can, there's nothing else that's jumping out at anybody. I could just, I'll figure out how to stop sharing. I can also send this, or I think I shared it on Teams already, if anybody wants to take a look, but I think we've done a lot of things on this list.
Definitely.
It might be productive, Carrie, to bring that back at some point if we have new members on the task force. Maybe delete the things that we've already dealt with, leave some of the things on that we haven't dealt with, and see if they have new ideas or suggestions at some point to add to that too.
Do another exercise like brainstorming.
Mm. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and some things may not be relevant anymore, or like, yeah, or just we're in a different place now. So
Okay, does anyone have any final comments?
I move we adjourn.
I agree. It was a good meeting. We went almost to the full this time, and that was good. And the meeting has been adjourned.
Catch everybody
Thank
online.
you.
thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.